conjunction with the model of, is a market competitive, price competitive, or is it a monopoly? Price monopoly, and of course most markets fall in between those two. Most markets put prices in between those two. And so this gets at the question of who will buy insurance? And the basic model suggests that this is a risk line. This is aligned with insurance. The model suggests that as long as your happiness level with no risk is greater than your happiness level with the risk, you will buy the insurance. And if, for example, the expected loss comes out to be $800, $800 expected loss, this right here, and C2 minus the expected loss will end up being your expected consumption. But so if this part here is $800, the idea would be then that if you had to spend $800 for insurance, it would make you this happy, this much happiness. Whereas you're only this happy, utility-wise with risk, utility with risk. But the way this person looks, they might be able to spend not just $800, but say $1,200 for insurance, and they would still be happier than they would be with more money, but with risk. So, what does that mean for anything? It means the most important market that sort of is out there where insurance buying is voluntary is the purchasing of individual health care. But another famous one is certainly the purchasing of things like term life insurance. And one thing that economists understand about the market for individually buying health care is that the markets are closer to the monopoly price than they are to the competitive price. Right now, the markets out there are not that competitive. The prices are up here rather than down here. The reason I just draw them here is because essentially there's a whole bunch of models in reality of oligopoly which explain these markets that are close to monopoly but not quite full monopoly, 2 or 3 players selling insurance in the state, versus good information and many suppliers, leading down to prices closer to the competitor. In theory, if there were a perfectly competitive market in the long run for insurance, if the expected loss were $800, if that were the expected loss, then an insurance company should offer you that insurance first for $810, another one will come in and offer it to you for $808, $805, $802, until they drove themselves to zero profits. The idea of perfect competition is that in the long run, suppliers keep entering the market until you get all the way to zero profits. All the way to zero profits. So, if they can make $800, if that's the average return they have to pay to you, then someone will offer you that insurance policy for $801, ignoring administrative costs. But so the idea is that the competitive, perfectly competitive long-run price for insurance for this person would only be $800 there. And so this person would buy the insurance happily, spend $800, be much happier. Well, that's not the way the insurance markets work. In reality, we're up here, higher prices. And with those higher prices, you have to pay more for insurance. And in fact, if the market price ends up being over here, meaning in this case you have to pay perhaps $400 for the insurance, pushing it all the way to there, this right here, this is your happiness level with risk. The only way you can get no risk is to spend this much money, getting you all the way to this point. Or essentially, you choose to avoid buying health insurance as an individual because the cost is greater than what it's worth to you. You'd rather have the risk that maybe I'll get hurt. So one reason